And now we're talking about Hurricane Julia, which left several people dead and some serious damage to Central America. 3 people died in Honduras. More than 9,000 people are still in shelters. In Panama, authorities reported at least 1 person dead and more than 250 were evacuated after Julia hit the country as a Category 1 hurricane. In El Salvador, Julia left at least 8 victims dead there, and according to the country's civil protection, there are still about 1,000 people in shelters. Heavy rains are expected and could lead to more flooding and landslides. And now to the latest on the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say at least a dozen Russian missiles struck a southeastern city for the second day in a row, killing at least 1 person. Missile strikes have been reported in several Ukrainian cities, and on Monday, Russian forces launched what it calls retaliatory attacks on regions across the country, hitting heavily populated civilian areas and several infrastructure targets, killing at least 19 people and injuring nearly 100. U.S. President Joe Biden will join world leaders for an emergency summit to discuss the situation on Tuesday. Astrid Martinez reports.
New Russian airstrikes hit a car dealership and apartment buildings today in the southeastern Ukraine city of Zaporizhia. While in the capital, Kyiv, air raid sirens sent residents to shelter in underground metro stations. A day after Russian missiles rained down on more than a dozen regions of Ukraine.
The entire world has once again seen the true face of the terrorist state that kills our people.
President Biden and other G7 leaders are holding an emergency meeting this morning to discuss support for Ukraine and ways to hold Russian President Vladimir Putin accountable. Putin has claimed the strikes were in retaliation for the destruction of a vital bridge that connects Russia to Crimea over the weekend.
Russia is a terrorist state.
The latest attacks set off pro-Ukraine demonstrations around the globe. From Sydney, Australia, to Bucharest, Romania, outside the Ukrainian embassy, to Washington, D.C., where demonstrators projected messages onto the Russian embassy while singing at the gates. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky will address the G7 leaders at the top of today's emergency meeting. Astrid Martinez, CBS News, New York.
And Ukraine's president is expected to ask G7 leaders for more weapons to defend against Russian airstrikes. The U.S. has committed to providing Ukraine with advanced surface-to-air defense missile systems, though a Pentagon official tells CBS News the delivery of the first 2 systems are still a month away. Well, switching gears now, Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Gaston Browne says he understands why his Grenadian counterpart has expressed the desire to lease an aircraft to ease regional travel woes. Grenada Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell said his administration is prepared to go that route if Caribbean governments are unable to sort out the regional transportation sector by the end of 2022. Caribbean travel has been thrown into chaos following the collapse of the Liat Airline 1974 Limited, with the region traveling population disgruntled at the inability to move around as freely as they used to during Liat's operations. Liat is owned by the governments of Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In 2020, former majority shareholders Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines voted to liquidate the airline. Since then, regional travel has become very difficult and expensive. Prime Minister Gaston Browne has been leading the fight to keep the airline in the skies and increase airlift in the region. Other regional governments have recently expressed an interest in investing in the regional carrier.
What was decided is that we'll get a study completed. I know that's going to take several more months. But in the interim, if we don't scale up Liat, then he has a point. Because I think we're going to have a very strong tourism season in 2023 within the Caribbean. And we can't have Liat with 3 planes and just sit back. So what we plan to do is that we're going to add about 2 more planes within the next few months. Hopefully we can get them in place for the next season. We are currently negotiating with a potential lessor.
Well, meantime, a new forecast predicts the cost of holiday travel will shoot up this week as the Thanksgiving rush gets closer. The big question now, whether that ticket you pay for will be worth it after the cancellations we saw all summer long. Pete Montine reports.
Thanksgiving travel is about to take off, and it will be the most expensive of the last 5 years. Travel site Hopper says tickets will cost 19% more compared to last year. The average domestic round-trip ticket, $274.
This Thanksgiving will be a very expensive holiday to travel, especially for travelers who are booking late.
Now the pressure is on airlines to avoid a meltdown like this summer when they canceled a total of 55,000 flights. Federal data shows 40% of all the cancellations were for reasons that the airlines could control, not weather.
It is abundantly clear that the majority of delays rest with the airlines.
While airlines insist the blame is on the understaffed air traffic control centers.
In the summer, we had shortages almost every day, and they can lead to hundreds of cancellations and delays.
Hiring is ramping up. The FAA is bringing on new air traffic controllers. American Airlines has hired more than 1,400 new employees since Labor Day. United has added more than 1,500 new pilots this year, and there are 3,000 new flight attendants at Southwest.
We're certainly with you. We're pushing on our airlines to not overpromise in the schedule so that we can actually deliver what we're selling to you.
Even still, carriers are cutting their fall schedules, a move Delta called a huge improvement in curbing summer cancellations and delays. Industry data shows American Airlines dropped 31,000 placeholder flights from its November schedule. For travelers, it all adds up to a travel season with fewer options and higher prices.
We're expecting to see chaos at the airports over the holidays, but American travelers have shown that they're resilient and they're willing to pay more and experience these disruptions to get back to see family and friends after 2 years of depressed travel.
Well, meantime, a fishing trip turned into a rescue mission over the weekend when 3 people became stranded in the Gulf of Mexico for more than a day after their boat sank, with 2 of them fighting off shark attacks before help arrived. The Coast Guard rescued the trio about 25 miles off the coast of Louisiana after a family member reported that the boaters had not returned from a fishing trip Saturday night. When rescuers found them, they were fending off sharks in the water. They each sustained injuries to their hands due to shark bites.